Hello everyone, good to have you back. Today we're going to be looking at Operation Sealion. Why didn't Germany invade Britain in 1940? Let's find out. Following the fall of France in June 1940, the German High Command was confident that a peace offer from Britain would be imminent. Hitler even disbanded 17 of his infantry divisions as he awaited the anticipated peace offer. And in Britain there was a feeling that peace may be best, given the war hadn't been contained, and its continuation would invariably mean mass destruction for the whole continent. Even prior to France's defeat, peace negotiations were being discussed, with British Foreign Secretary Lord Halifax believing the best way for Britain to obtain reasonable terms was through Hitler's ally Benito Mussolini. But following France's defeat, no peace offer is made. By July, Hitler began to realise that peace might not be forthcoming at all. Britain now had a new Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, and he'd been pretty emphatic about his view on the war. Consequently, German U-boats were poised to cut off the maritime communication that was Britain's lifeline, with the Luftwaffe on standby to take the battle to the sky for air superiority. On the 16th of July, Hitler issued Führer Directive No. 16, which outlined preparations for an amphibious landing upon the British Isles. In it, Hitler noted, "As England, in spite of her hopeless military situation, still shows no signs of willingness to come to terms, I have decided to prepare, and if necessary carry out, a landing operation against her. The aim of this operation is to eliminate the English motherland as a base from which the war against Germany can be continued, and if necessary to occupy the country completely." The plan, codenamed Operation Sealion, was to be completed by the 16th of August, just 1 month away. A monumental task. Its success, or lack thereof, would rest on the shoulders of Hermann Goering, as it was he and his Luftwaffe tasked with gaining air superiority over the Royal Air Force in order for Operation Sealion to have a good chance of success. Erich Raeder, the Grand Admiral and Commander-in-Chief of the Kriegsmarine, the German Navy, was sceptical of the operation and did speak of the impracticality of a sea invasion taking place so soon. No date was set for the cross-channel invasion, but preparations were underway for it. General Franz Halder, Chief of Staff for the German Armed Forces, was responsible for the plan. His approach was ambitious. His initial plan proposed landing troops on over 200 miles of coastline, from Ramsgate to Lyme Regis. Raeder strongly disapproved. The Kriegsmarine had already suffered losses during the summer campaign in Norway, and its navy was far smaller than the British Royal Navy. Faced with the naval superiority of the British, Raeder speculated that an invasion could bring about disaster. To make matters worse, Germany had no landing craft to unload soldiers onto the hostile beaches, and the British Channel, far from being a short cross, was one of the most heavily guarded and most unpredictable bodies of water there was. But Germany's inadequate navy was due in large part to Hitler's belief that his nation would never need to fight the British. At the time, the Kriegsmarine had just 43 operational U-boats, as opposed to the 463 they would have by the end of the war in May 1945. Had Germany had those 463 U-boats during June of 1940, they would have likely been able to end the war with Britain on favourable terms right there and then, but Hitler never expected it. This leaves Operation Sealion to be the haphazard affair we know it as. Unlike the Battle of France, Germany are now starting from scratch. Their power lay with the army, not the air or sea, and so an invasion upon a major power was always going to be difficult. The battle for Britain would have to work, and consequently it raged on in the skies. Nonetheless, the German High Command concluded that the best way to pressure the British into a peace would be via air and submarine attacks. The invasion itself, Operation Sealion, was still a last resort, and not the sole aim of the air campaign. At the outbreak of the Battle of Britain, Churchill had proclaimed on the 14th of July, "And now it has come to us to stand alone in the breach and face the worst that the tyrant's might and enmity can do, bearing ourselves humbly before God, but conscious that we serve an unfolding purpose. We are ready to defend our native land against the invasion by which it's threatened. We are fighting by ourselves alone, but we are not fighting for ourselves alone." Churchill's resolve is contrasted by Hitler's indecision. Just days after Churchill's show of defiance, Hitler speaks to the Reichstag, making yet another offer for peace. The offer was again flatly rejected by Churchill, but with peace seemingly no longer possible, steps are taken to establish suitable landing craft for a cross-channel invasion. Barges were the only flat-bottomed vessels Germany could get, and they were assembled at ports in France and the Low Countries. These were to be the landing craft for the army, A huge task ensued, modifying the craft so they would be able to fit and perform various tasks. Other tests needed to be carried out, and the original plan was scaled down, with a shorter front considered more feasible and defensible. Soldiers would now be landing from Worthing to Ramsgate. The revised plans, however, meant that just one German army would carry out the invasion, and it was to be commanded by Gert von Rundstedt, a commander who too had little faith in Operation Sealion. He noted that Napoleon had once wanted to invade Britain, but had decided against it given the great perils it would entail. The reality facing Germany now was that the battle for Britain was taking its toll on their air power, and consequently Raeder wanted the invasion postponed until the spring of 1941. But Hitler disagreed, though he did postpone the operation until September. Postponing the invasion was welcomed by Raeder, though it was also a big bonus for the British too. Their sea defences were being strengthened and becoming ever more robust. A single army invasion now would certainly be pushed back. Long gone was the ramshackle army that had fled Dunkirk. And Hitler remains unsure. On the 31st of July 1940, he actually informs his generals at Berchtesgaden that he believed that Britain's best hope lay with Russia. He noted that with Russia smashed, Britain's last hope would be shattered. Germany will then be the master of Europe and the Balkans. This, however, remains just an idea, and alternative options should all else fail. The battle for Britain would continue. On the 1st of August 1940, via Führer Directive No. 17, Hitler instructed intensified air and sea warfare in a bid to establish necessary conditions required for invasion. The targets remained enemy warships, ports, food stocks and merchant shipping. This would soon change, however, with British cities becoming targets for the Luftwaffe in response to British bombing of Berlin. For the Luftwaffe, however, the plan doesn't work. Far from gaining air superiority, RAF bombers were now bombing ports across the Channel. Field Marshal Keitel, Hitler's Chief of Staff, issues a directive on the 3rd of September, postponing Sealion until the 21st of September. In his memoirs, Erich Raeder would write about the period. Up until now, the British had never thrown the full power of their fleet into action. However, a German invasion of England would be a matter of life or death for the British, and they would unhesitatingly commit their naval forces to the last ship and the last man in an all-out fight for survival. Our air force could not be counted on to guard our transports from the British fleets, because their operations would depend on the weather, if for no other reason. It could not be expected that even for a brief period, our air force could make up for our lack of naval superiority. Germany only ever had a few months following the fall of France in June 1940 to find a way to bring Britain to terms. After September, the weather would make an invasion near impossible, and for Germany, time was of the essence. The British blockade was hindering their war effort, and the Germans always knew that getting soldiers across the Channel was always going to be a tall order. Just look at the Dieppe raid, the Allied amphibious attack on German-occupied territory in August of 1942. It was over in less than 10 hours, with almost 4,000 of the 6,000 men that landed either dead, wounded or missing. Tanks were stranded on the beach and nothing was achieved. Germany could expect no less if they invaded the UK. The UK was now heavily defended. But even if an invasion was somehow successful, keeping soldiers supplied and organised was another matter altogether, as the Royal Navy would surely cut the German supply lines. The British had between 700 and 800 coastal craft, and Germany would only manage to sink 1 in every 100 British vessels passing through the British Channel in 1940. With the odds stacked against him, Hitler finally abandons Operation Sealion altogether on the 17th of September 1940. He knew his armament and power lay with land warfare and not amphibious invasions. The Luftwaffe had failed, and his navy was insufficient due to his lack of foresight with regards to a war with Britain. Aware that America would be ready for war within 1 year, and with no sign of Britain backing down, he realised that if he was to face them he would need more raw materials, and they were to be found in the East. Germany will have to move fast and ultimately open up a war on multiple fronts to claim the resources to match the might of the Allies. But for now, their quest to defeat Britain by invasion is over. Alright, so thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did find it interesting, I'd love to hear any comments that you have. And I do, as ever, look forward to having you back for the next video. Bye for now.